mystery and horror, the air itself is filled with monsters.
Children of the night, what music they make. He's alive! He's alive!
You know who to call when you have ghosts. But who do you call when you have monsters?
We're the Monster Squad. What's a squad? It's like Miami Vice, I think.
They're young and inexperienced.
Naughty virgin.
They're a bit disorganized.
Monsters are not real.
We don't know that, sir.
2,000-year-old dead guys do not get up and walk away by themselves.
But when strange things start happening in town...
There's a monster in my closet.
Ooh, look at that big, scary monster!
What's happening? You wait until the werewolf.
Silver bullet?
They're the only ones ready to do battle.
Something's out there that's killing people. And if it's monsters, nobody's gonna do a thing about it but us.
Soon the creatures of the night shall rule the world.
Real monsters? Us? Midnight. In the world, remember? Maybe we can be like Mask Squad instead, you know. Do mask bombs.
We got 1035, stick back up! Hurry
Or Nature Squad. The book is right. Don't you think it's all true?
By midnight,
You guys!
they won't seem so young anymore. The Monster Squad.
Wolfman's gone mad.
Well, hello, all you monster fiends, and thank you for joining us for another deep dive, factoid-filled episode exploring Hollywood's most famous monsters. I am your master of ceremonies, Sam, and I'm joined as always by Dan from Bleeding Marvelous. Say hello, Dan.
Hello, Dan.
Hi, Dan. How are we doing? How are we doing after the whole Tom Savini? It's all done with, kind of.
I still dream about it. I'm not going to lie. That was a lot.
Yeah.
And there's, like, as we said last week, there still could be another part. There's more.
There's more. There is so much more that we can do, and we will do. But for today, we are going into the monster of all monster movies, because it has all the monsters, but not licensed Universal monsters.
No, they're just likeness.
Just the likeness, and we will get into all of it. We today, of course, doing the Monster Squad.
Yay!
Yes. So I'll do the disclaimer and then we'll get on with it. So everything discussed in today's episode is our opinions and our opinions alone. If you'd like to discuss anything from today's episode, please come and join us on the Facebook page, the comment section, or the Discord, and we can have an open discussion. What we won't have is anyone coming for us and telling us our opinions are wrong. We can all agree to disagree in fandom. So let's keep it fun, keep it kind, and keep the toxic behaviour out of nerdism.
Don't be a dick.
What she said.
Yes.
Yeah. We could have just compiled all that disclaimer into one sentence. Don't be a dick.
It's the only rule I have on my Facebook page. When I run the page, you get one warning. If I think you're being a dick, I'll say, rule number 1, don't be a dick. And if they keep on, they're gone. Can't be bothered.
Out of there. So, the Monster Squad from 1987. Scoring 56% on Rotten Tomatoes. Yes, I know. Directed by Fred, you'll have to help me out, Decker?
Black and Decker, yeah.
Yeah, Decker. Starring Andre Gower, Robbie King, Tom Noonan, and the marvellous Duncan Regner. I hope I'm saying that right.
I think it's Rager. Yeah.
Well, never send a man to do a kid's job as we bring you the Monster Squad.
Ooh.
What a movie.
Or in other words, the best horror you've never seen.
Yeah. It's
That's what it was-
shocking
that
how
is
many
what it-
people have not seen it.
That was what it was branded as. The best horror you have never seen.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is literally from start to finish one massive homage and love letter to the universal horror, not actually just horror in general. It is a huge, massive love letter to it. From the kids' clubhouse to the Stephen King t-shirt. I've been meaning
Stephen King rules there.
Stephen King rules. I've been meaning to buy that for ages. You can get them on eBay, and I've been meaning to get it. It was what I was going to wear originally for the first episode. Because, like, you know, we were whole Monster Squad ourselves. Sorry, that was so goofy.
What was that sound? Brilliant.
Yeah, so it's a huge, massive homage to Universal Monsters without actually
Copyright
being yeah, it's one massive thing that runs through if you are looking into anything to do with the Monster Squad, is the fact that they had to really cover their asses when it came down to the likeness of the monsters that they used.
Yes. Yeah, it was a trip, but I think we'll get into that in a bit. But yeah, I mean, the sad thing about this film is, as I said, it's the best horror you've never seen, purely because it had a 2-week run in cinemas. That's all it was given, a 2-week run, because they considered it such a flop. And there's 2 reasons they think it was a flop for. One was that Lost Boys had actually come out 2 weeks prior, and that was still riding high when they released it. So technically Lost Boys for the time did really, really well, but La Bamba did better than the Lost Boys in the box office.
Hey, let's not mock La Bamba. That is
I've met Lou Diamond Phillips, you know.
He's gonna be it for the love of horror. I am so excited.
He was really quite nice. Rob didn't have a clue who he was as usual. So
bro,
I was like, we've got to meet him. He went, who? I was like, shh, shush your mouth. Young Guns.
Yes. Also, he's in Brooklyn Nine-Nine for all younger viewers, but I do know there's Richie Valens, La Bamba. Come on, it's brilliant.
Within a 3-month period, they released, I've written it down because, you know, me and like writing things down. There was, where did I write it down now? It's a lovely song, wasn't it?
I love it.
They released La Bamba, Lost Boys, Spaceballs, Masters of the Universe, Adventures in Babysitting. Did I say RoboCop?
No.
So all of those have come out within a period from June to August, because this was released August 14th, 1987.
Yeah, we've just had an anniversary of it. Hence the reason why it came to the forefront and we were like, oh, Monster Squad. It's
one of those films, and I'll tell you now, I've got to mention him because, well, there's 2 people I've got to mention that will kill me if I don't. There's a guy called Jamie Lambert, and this is his all-time favourite movie. Everything that there is to be known, Jamie knows about it. And I think he'll kill me if I get anything wrong. Same with Dave. Dave said he might even listen to this episode, which, to be honest, is a compliment in itself.
Dave's surprising. He joins quite a few. He just doesn't tell anyone.
Oh, you sneaky little
At least
leader.
I think it is Dave Dent who does that.
But yeah, this is also one of his favourites. Him and his wife Leslie have got a bust made of the Frankenstein, and he's got bogus tattooed on his neck.
Bogus.
But yeah, if I don't mention them 2, they'll kill me. But
I have so much to say about that scene. So much to say about that whole ending.
There's a lot. Like, I found out a lot more than I thought I was going to.
Yeah.
For something that didn't get a DVD release for 19 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Fred Decker didn't know that anyone liked this movie until 2006. He thought it was the biggest flop of his life, and he thought it was the biggest mistake he'd ever made. But it was his favourite film to work on of all time that he's ever done.
Oh, that is I'm glad he knows. I'm glad he knows. I only watched this. I hadn't actually heard of it until my husband pointed it out. He was like, "You've never heard of the Monster Squad?" That was a really good impression of Anth, by the way. And we watched it a few years ago. A few years, probably a bit longer than that now. And I have never fallen so madly in love with the movie instantly. Like from start to finish, I was glued. And I didn't like. For all I'm a huge Universal Monsters fan, I got what they were doing.
Yeah,
I totally understood it. This was not a piss take. This was not mocking. This was just pure homage to a genre that, some people do tend to forget sometimes.
I think I was going to say, I think Universal missed a massive trick not getting on board with this.
Mm-hmm.
For the series, they did great without them.
Yeah,
but
massively.
Imagine what of a resurgence they would have had in 1987 for the Universal Monsters all in one place. The amount of merchandising there would have been, the amount of push this would have got in the cinema. The film would have just gone into the stratosphere.
Massively. Just based on Dracula alone. Now, I am not the biggest Dracula fan. I'm really not. Like, for all, yes, my phone cover is Dracula. But it's only because the Frankenstein one wasn't available. Something about even Lugosi's Dracula doesn't get as Gary Oldman's, but him is a different kind of kind of Dracula, and it was exciting to see it.
Did you know he got voted? They did an all-time a list of the 100 greatest villains of all time in 2006, and he came number 30. That is quite an achievement for a one-off film that no one's really seen.
Mm-hmm. It's massive. I love the look of him. I love the attitude of him. I love that. Yeah, I'm the fucking leader. Why would I not be the leader? I'm the leader. Like, I loved that.
Did you also know that, I don't know whether it was a replica or I'm presuming a replica, because trying to get hold of the original would have been really bloody difficult. But he wore Bela Lugosi's ring the whole time. He had the big scarab type ring on. Oh,
hasn't Zach Bagan's got that now?
Oh, of course he fucking has.
I'm sure he has that because he has Bela's mirror. Sorry, that was so northern of us. Mirror. I'm sure it's the mirror he has because he has this whole experience of standing in front of. I could be making this up.
I've been to his museum in Vegas, and he is just a cash cow. He is.
Not to say I wouldn't want to go and see it. Just saying.
Well, that was the whole point. I went to see it because I went to see it, and I thought, right, that's that done. Because I'd seen Ghost Adventures for years, and he is just an ass. This poor lady, he walked in, and this poor lady was like, "Oh my God, hi Zach, hi Zach." He just looked her in the face, looked her up and down, and walked off. And I just thought, you piece of shit. These people are paying to come and see. You have murderabilia. Let call a spade, Zach. It's murderabilia, and it's pretty fucking tasteless. Yet I would still see it. However, still tasteless. Yeah, I mean, it's the stuff he does in there as well, and then tries to claim it's paranormal. It's
haunted.
All gaffs, all of it. You stood in the room with the Divic box, and they're pumping in air and going, "Can you feel the air? Can you feel the air move?" And it's like, yes, there's a grate there pumping in air. You're in another room. They've got a pre-recorded like a white noise thing with the words, and they go, "Oh, what can you hear?" And it's just like, get in the bin.
I do believe in some form of paranormal activity. I do. I believe that there's something there. However, I do know it's like a charlatan when I see one, and fuck me, I've watched enough ghost hunters or ghost adventurers to know what a dick and a charlatan he actually is. The oh God, what was it? The Demon House. Have you watched it? Oh, it's horrific. Oh.
Zach Bagans is the only person to ever have blocked me on Twitter. You're welcome.
Oh, what an achievement. Oh, that is amazing.
Basically, he was making a comment about being how hard it was being famous and that he couldn't settle down in relationships and all this sort of stuff. Me being me and my sarcastic self, but must be really, really hard getting macked on all the time by all these women. And he emailed me back. He messaged me back through Twitter, you know, on the thing, and he added me back or whatever it is you do. And he was like, "I don't know what you mean, macking," and I was like, it can't be hard being you, looking the way you are, with all these women throwing them at your feet. Next thing you know, it came up, you have been blocked.
Oh, what an achievement! Blocked by Zach Bagans. The only thing I ever found interesting about Ghost Adventurers was the actual true crime that happened within their cast. They had 2 paranormal investigators who used to come with them, and they were a married couple. Husband killed the wife. And they even fucking exploited that in one of their episodes.
That was disgusting because they went looking for him, didn't they?
Horrific.
Yeah.
Horrific. Even if it was real, they were your friends. Like, they were your friends who fucking died under awful fucking circumstances. You dick. We have gone off on a massive tangent.
I know, but we wouldn't be us if we didn't.
It wouldn't be a Monsters Up North episode if we didn't go off on a tangent. But it was worth it because I fucking hate that man. Yeah. But yeah, before we go into Monster Squad, the glasses, the tinted glasses. Do you know why he has to wear them? Because the demon house did it to him.
Oh, that's right. He got his eyesight done by a demon. All right,
done by a demon. Yeah.
Don't mean that you had a bog eye or something before you even got full of shit.
Yeah.
Honestly. Get in the bin.
Get in the fucking bin. Monster Squad.
Yes. Well, it nearly wasn't Duncan Rager, was it?
No, it wasn't. It was a very unknown Irish actor at the time who I don't think I would have been mad at. However, only because I know... You would not be mad at this?
I don't know, because all I can hear in my head is I have a very specific set of skills. And I can't imagine him, you know, saying that to a 5-year-old, screaming in his face, you know, so...
that speech, if you hadn't guessed, it was Liam Neeson.
And we're talking William... Was it William... He wasn't William Wallace, was he? He was...
It was definitely not William Wallace.
No, because he's played like...
No, Mel Gibson played William Wallace.
No, I know that, but wasn't he in it with him, or he's played a Celt like that at some point as well in a movie?
Potentially.
Yeah, when he was that age, it was when he was going to be cast. It was late 80s, and he had that...
It's the Taken thing. I totally forgot about that.
I'm gonna find you and I'm gonna kill you. Phoebe screaming in his face.
No, I'll take it back. Duncan's a winner. Duncan won. They actually him and the guy who played Wolfman or Frankenstein.
Right, the guy who played Frankenstein was Tom Noonan.
Tom Noonan, that's right. So Tom Noonan and Duncan, I'm just going to call him Duncan from now on, because I'm not going to try and butcher this man's surname, because he is, you know, he's a legend. They stayed in character the whole time. So the kids only ever saw them as their characters. And when Phoebe initially meets Frankenstein, that's the first time she ever sees him. Her screams are genuine. But that girl, I fucking love her.
I love the fact that they were so clever to rip the scene off from Frankenstein, but not rip it off completely. She's sitting by the river playing. The monster walks down, sees her. Obviously, no yeeting happens at this point. He doesn't throw Phoebe into the water, but
no. But it's beautifully done. Do you know what it is? It's the audience members getting what they initially wanted. Oh, you've just your creature, whatever was sitting on top of your creature behind you, is just went like that and fell. Your creature's just moved.
Ghosts. There's a ghost in the creature. It's all right, don't worry. It's just a sticker or something balanced on top, I think.
Yeah, that's so funny. It's just the fact that I can see it and you can't.
It was Zach Bagans who's cursing me.
Oh no! What have we done? We brought the evil spirit of Zach Bagans into Dan's room.
Get out!
Get out! Yeah, it was such a beautiful scene to do because it's the audience's kind of, what we initially want from the original is don't do that. Don't do that to that little girl. She would be your friend. And guess what? Phoebe is Frankenstein's friend. Because Phoebe is she's a beautifully written character. She's not an annoying kid.
No, I think they found the right balance with using her and how they used her. Like when she was trying to get in the clubhouse, when she wanted to be there in the clubhouse, Mum said it's a prescription or something. And like, the way that they got her to use, they didn't use much of her until they needed to.
Yeah, but she wasn't overused.
Yeah, and I think I kind of got the impression, because they wrote there was two documentaries that you could go and watch. One was called The Monster Squad Forever.
Really?
Yeah, I watched that one on Saturday or Sunday, I think it was, and that came out in 2007. The Monster Squad Forever, and then obviously you've got the bigger documentary Wolfman's Got Nards, which came out in 2018, which was Andre Gower. Yeah, Andre Gower directed the whole thing.
Oh shit, I have seen that. I saw that a few years ago.
Yeah,
that was when I was on my Monster Squad trail, and yeah, Andrew Gower was doing a lot of conventions as well, wasn't he?
Yeah. Well, because it mainly features him, Rudy, and Phoebe, and obviously Phoebe's a grown woman now, but she was saying that she was in college and she was going to a friend's like room, they have their rooms, and there was a Monster Squad poster on the wall, and at that point no one had really talked about it. It had its HBO release on cable, so if you hadn't have seen it on cable, there was not really much way of you going and seeing it unless you went and hired the VHS, and college students can't imagine they do a lot of that. So they had the poster on the wall, and she walked in and she went, "You know that film?" And she was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "That's me." And her friends were like, "No." And she was like, "Yeah, look, that's me." And her boyfriend at the time was like, "Why didn't you tell me?" She was like, "Didn't realize anybody knew the film." She was just so taken aback that people knew what it was, that she was she realized that it was a bit more popular than she'd anticipated because it flopped so hard. They literally all of them didn't think it was worth anything.
No, and because the figures, which I actually wrote down this week, I wrote figures down. It grossed 3.8 million.
Yeah,
on a 12 million budget.
Correct, which gave them an 8.2 million loss.
Yeah.
But if you put that by today's standards, they made a 22 million loss on that film.
Yeah,
by today's standards. I mean, I can see why the studio was pissed. But I can
when you're looking at figures, but
that's 2 weeks. That's only 2 weeks. Had that have had a full run, I think they would have made their money back.
If they had Universal behind them and not TriStar, it would have been a whole different fucking ball game. This would have been a whole different merch ball game. It would and not only that, I reckon we would have had Versus movies come out.
Was one.
Was there?
It never happened, but it was going to be the runner-up sequel. Should they have got a second movie, and it was going to be Godzilla. Monster Squad versus Godzilla, yeah. So
whoa. I mean, there would have been a Frankenstein down, but still,
you never know. Boris Karloff could have been riding the bloody Godzilla into the thing for all we know.
It probably was. It probably was Boris Karloff they were going to cast as Godzilla.
There he is again.
He's back. Everyone's favorite mother is in this movie. Mary, I had to go and get her name because I never remember it, but she is everywhere. Mary Ellen Trainor, the mother from the Goonies. She's also in Scrooged. She is anywhere Bob Zemeckis is, you will see this lady.
She plays mum well,
She
though.
does.
And in this, she gave off the pissed off wife to a husband that's there at the police station all the time, and his job is worth more than his family. And I'm sitting there going, is he putting food on the table? I'm shouting at
Have you got a roof over your head?
Exactly. I'm doing what old people do, you know. I was like,
yeah. When you start looking at things logically and not how you would in your early 20s, where you're like, yeah, you tell him, bitch. Yep, we've hit that age.
Yes, I'm at that age.
Yeah, if Bob Zemeckis is anywhere near or one of his friends, you will find Mary Ellen Trina. I know I've just said that name.
Yeah.
Because they were married at one point. But
really? I didn't know they were married.
Hopefully I am not making this up because
I didn't look. So
it's only because it became a coincidence. She kept coming up in some of these movies, and I was like, I need to. Yeah, she was married to Robert Zemeckis from 1980 to 2000. But in 2015, unfortunately, we lost Mary Trainor.
Yeah.
But she is an actress who never got a big role. However, it didn't matter because we will always remember her for the significance that she brought to the roles that she played.
Well, she was everybody's 80s mum, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was.
So it's like if you maxed out every copy of the Goonies you ever bought, she was your mum for that hour and a half.
Yeah. She says one of my favorite lines in Scrooged when they're talking about the old lady, and she goes, she's dead, Frank.
That is my favorite. I have two favorite Christmas movies,
Scrooged
and Black Christmas. And on occasion I will watch The Hogfather if I'm feeling Terry Pratchett-y, but like that's it. That's I don't do Christmas, so that's where we are with those. That tells you everything you need to know about me and Christmas. But
I found a new Christmas movie that's come a favorite of mine. Christmas is a very stressful time for me.
I hate it.
I love December 1st, putting the tree up. Love it.
Don't even put a tree up in our house.
I knew that. I did know that. So I can't act surprised because I did already know that. But mine is a Harry Potter themed Christmas tree. And I do, but come December 2nd, the fucking stress just kicks right in, and the nightmares don't stop until December 23rd every fucking year. And then come the day after Boxing Day, my tree's down, Christmas is done with.
I can't
That's
even.
It. Once the stress is over with. I mean, I had young nephews for such a long time. I mean, they're in their 20s now. God no, the youngest one's 18, but still they're not in an excitable Christmas mood anymore. But no, last year Krampus became a favorite of mine. We've done it again.
I know, we can't help it.
We just can't. We can't help it.
When you start looking at the other I was going to say animal actors, that's not what I meant. The other Universal monster actors.
Yeah.
They actually, some of them have appeared in very random places. Like John Grease, I think it is. He played the Wolfman out of the wolf suit. He was Uncle Rico in Napoleon Dynamite. And I didn't know. And I kept looking at him going, you look so familiar.
Yeah. I can only picture him, but I've never seen Napoleon Dynamite.
It's an awkward thing to watch. You have to be in there.
See, I love awkward. Like,
yeah,
I like The Office, the UK, that kind of awkwardness. Like, I love shit like that. And I used to own it on DVD, and I never thought to sit and put it in and watch it. I was one of these kids who just loved. My DVD collection was everything.
Yeah,
like it was my pride and joy. My horror section was immense. Like the majority of my stuff was horror. But I had the odd occasion that I thought I was so cool because, indie films, and yeah. Never watched any of them.
Yeah. Sometimes you shouldn't.
No. But I've never seen Napoleon Dynamite.
But they're quickly going over Michael Reed McKay, who I know you have a fact about, who played the mummy.
Yeah.
Did did you know he played Stryker's son in X-Men 2? In the lad in the wheelchair who's got the same-ish powers as Professor X, and he's warping his mind. That is the guy that played the mummy in.
Well, do you want to know my interesting fact about
the mummy? Go for it.
Okay.
Go for it.
So when they were casting the mummy, they had to be as like so to the point of who they wanted. And the advertisement said, looking for extremely thin actor on the verge of anorexia. Yeah. That was the advertisement that they put in the paper because they needed somebody very, very slim.
Yep.
I wrote that down because I could not stop laughing when I read it. I'm not going to lie.
I can see why they said it, because they're looking for dust and bones. So it makes perfect sense that in the non-PC land of 1980s, it wasn't something that was something you couldn't say. You
couldn't get away with that now.
No.
That would be incredibly damaging. However, we are talking language back in 1987 when this was not considered damaging. They were just trying to be very literal.
Hence why this has always come under a bit of fire. Well, not always. Since about 2006, when it's had its resurgence, the language has always been a bit of a icky situation for some of the things that they use. But again, it was the 80s, and why people don't understand that you cannot judge something from one time 40 years later with the same glasses on now. That you just can't do it. It is what it is. It's said, it made sense, and that was how the kids were talking back then. It was as real as they wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And you just accepted being talked to like that regardless. It wasn't classed as bullying. It was classed as jovial, boys will be boys kind of thing. And yes, I know now in today's standards, it's fucking atrocious to be called those things and be, and hear that stuff. But back then it wasn't. It was just secondary language that you just roll off your tongue. So,
well, what do we call it? Progression. We progress.
We call it something.
Yeah. We progress. What was I going to say? The opening of Monster Squad. I forgot what we were talking about there for a second. The opening for Monster Squad is when you see Van Helsing and Dracula going at it, and the whole amulet, and setting the scene as to where we're going with this. It was going to be very fucking different if Shane Black had his
treatment. Oh my god!
If Shane Black, again, another one who keeps creeping into these episodes. If Shane Black got his way, the original opening, the whole budget would have been spent just on that opening. He wanted fucking everything. Thank Christ Shane Black did not get his way.
Yeah, because I remember in one of the documentaries, Fred Decker said, I looked at him and I went, no. No, how are you going to have like Van Helsing riding in on horses with machine guns and
tight ropes of like coming out of the fucking castle and shit and explode? Like, Shane just must have had an absolute, like, do you know one of those like writing sessions where you're just like, oh yeah, and then this happens, and then that, not really thinking budgetary wise, this is never going to fucking work.
Do you know why? He'd just written Lethal Weapon when he was writing the treatment for Monster Squad. So Lethal Weapon came out in the April. Monster Squad came out in the August. And what the general consensus was in both the documentaries was that Shane was in Wolfman's Got Nards, but he wasn't in Monster Squad Forever. But Fred was in both, and Fred was like, he'd just come off the back of writing Lethal Weapon. So I think in his head, he was still stuck in that lane. He was very much in the high action, big budget, got this to do, and yeah, no, it's about like 5 kids. So we don't want 40 Dracula brides coming out of the floor, and
No, we just got the 3 that we were,
and one goes missing at one point. I don't know if you've noticed that. Towards the end, it's quite amusing. The scene where Rudy goes up, and I think I've got to get this quote right. I have got it written down, but I do know it. But when Rudy goes, they're at the church, and they say to Rudy, "Where are you going?" And he goes, "I'm in the club, aren't I?" And he goes and stakes 2 of the Dracula's brides, but the 3rd one's in the background. Then you never see her again. Disappeared, poof, gone. So
Dick.
don't know where she went, but Fred Decker said it's a movie. Don't think about it too hard. But people are like,
see, movie magic. There is one line that did in half. This is probably is it my favorite line? There are so many favorite lines in this movie, but this one I never noticed until I re-watched the scene today. Give me the amulet, you bitch.
That was the first time she saw him with the contacts and the teeth in as well.
She played it like a fucking champ.
When she's interviewed, she said that it was done in 1 take, but then when Andre was interviewed, he said it was done in 2 because she freaked when she first saw him. All the air went out of her lungs when she went to scream because she was so scared. She went,
oh.
So they had to redo that little bit and make her scream a bit more. So I think Duncan put it extra on that to make her physically scream.
It's the fact that it's an alien line. Like,
I know.
That absolutely tickled me sideways, and I can't believe I never noticed it. I want to talk about this end scene because that actually it lines up nicely with that. Okay, so he's walking down the street. It's probably one of the greatest scenes of the movie because it shows how fucking hard Dracula actually is, right? And he's just picking off these fucking policemen left, right, and center. It's absolutely effortless. And then he gets stood in front of this tiny little girl who has an amulet in her hand, picks her up by her neck and says, "Give me the amulet, you bitch," when quite easily he could have just went and took it.
Of course, but
he could have quite easily just went, "Thank you."
That would have taken away the whole toying with her thing.
That is the adult in me looking at it going, she's a child. Take that shit.
But I think he gets off on that, though. Gets off on that. That's not what I mean. Kids, I'm not saying that. I mean, the suffering, the pain, the fear. That's what he really enjoys. So I think for him, everything's a show.
You're right, because what he just done down that street was an absolute masterpiece performance of go away, bang, like literally it was flawless, it was effortless, but it was so effective. Them policemen really did overkill their little scenes of being hurt, but it didn't. I was just watching it back today and I was like, I wrote down, could have quite easily taken that.
No, you're right, could have massively.
But then you've got the scene with him and Frankenstein, and I just wish they drew it out just a little bit more, just to really like prove and show that Frankenstein was not him, was not in his caliber. He was kind, he was, different.
But I think Tom Noonan, though, he had a lot of issues with Fred Decker, in the way that Tom Noonan wanted to portray Frank, because they do call him Frankie in this, so I'm going to call him Frankie just for the lack of,
they do.
I'm not saying he is called Frankenstein. We know he's the monster, but they call him Frankie in this, so I'm just going to go.
Maybe we should have a banner that when every time we talk about Frankenstein, we're like, we understand that he is not Frankenstein. Yeah, put it in the disclaimer.
But yeah, I mean, originally Stan Winston the guy that played the Gill-man was Tom Woodruff Jr.
Yes.
And he was also the guy who developed Frankenstein's makeup.
Yes.
So he done Frankie's makeup, but they originally done him like a corpse. They painted him like a corpse. And when they tested it, Fred Decker and the studio people come in and went, "Oh, no, no, too much. This, you need to tone it down. So they made him more pallow and sickly looking instead of dead. Which, when you look at the rating it got, it would make it be okay though, because
Yeah.
in America it had a PG-13 rating, which is the equivalent to a 15, which is what it is in the UK. The Monster Squad is a 15. Bearing in mind, all the kids in that movie are under 15, apart from Rudy. So
I love him with it. At the end where he puts his arm around her and he proper squeezes. I love it. I absolutely love it. How they got around the issues with Universal, because this was one of the major problems, was infringing on the Universal monsters, and it's so subtle. It's ridiculous. So
Mr. Stan Winston and his magic again.
Wow, I said to Dan before we started this, it's someone I need to talk about, because I got too much into him than doing my notes, because it was just one interesting, like, oh my god moment after the next. He is a fucking genius. But it was so subtle what he did. So Dracula doesn't have the widow's peak.
Yes.
That's how you lose the Lugosi image in your head. Frankenstein's bolts were actually on his temple. Creature, the Gill-man, you will see significant, there is so much fucking detail put into the Gill-man. More than you will see in, like, Creature is iconic. And we have, if you go back to episode 1, we will talk about our love of the Creature. However, Gill-man has more detail than what the Creature has. And I think it's possibly even more creative than Creature.
Well, they made him more piranha-like in his face than they gave him teeth.
Yeah, they did.
So I know one of the guys who created him was Steve Wang. And in the interview, he was saying that when him and Tom Woodruff Jr. got together, they were trying to find a way to make the suit look different from the neck down. And as we well know from the Creature episode, they made it in 3 parts.
Yeah, it was
the original suit. Pieces. Yeah, 3 parts. Now this was one suit from the tips of the toes to the neck. It was one piece that he had to wear all day, and until he had finished filming, he couldn't take it off ever. Basically, this thing was glued onto him.
I did read something really interesting about Tom Woodruff Jr. and the suit.
Yeah,
was he didn't want anyone else to wear it, so he wore it himself.
Yeah,
he wasn't a like a in suit actor or anything like that. However, when he got the green light from Fred Dekker to go and do it, he did it for the next 20 years of his career.
That's the thing. That suit was pioneering that they made for the Gill-man,
right?
Because when you see the interview with the guys from Stan Winston, I saw a set of interviews with each bunch of guys that made each monster. And Steve was saying that when they did the Gill-man, him and Tom didn't design the Gill-man, but they obviously, with him being the actor, he had input because he knew the special effects way of doing it, the practical way, as well as being the inside it. So as they used it as one full suit, they scaled the size down. So normally when they make suits, they put a bit of room in. And they didn't with this. They made it a size or 2 sizes smaller so that it stretched over his body and it looked like part of his skin. So when he moved, it moved, instead of looking janky and like stuttery.
Puppetry, like almost puppetry.
So in doing so, it gave it a fluid movement. So it looked like it was his skin. It looked like it was him moving. Didn't look, like I say, as much as I love this.
Yeah, there's no denying our love for the Creature. However,
the costume was more fitted to serve the purpose that they needed to. And I think had they have had that idea when they done the Creature, it would have been a lot easier for like Rico when he was diving in it and things like that. So
it could have been a massive game changer, but let's not forget, Creature was done what, the 50s? Yeah.
54? Yeah.
You'd think I'd remember. I don't. So
I like the numbers, remember?
I know, I forget. See, this is why we work well together. She remembers the important stuff. I'm just here for the useless facts.
Special effects. She knows the special effects.
But the creature, like what we get from the creature from the 50s is nothing but spectacular.
Yeah.
For what they had. But what we get in Monster Squad is unreal. Gill-man, because that's what he's called, Gill-man, was unreal. But the one character I forgot to mention was Wolfman and how they made him different. I never say this right. They made him more Lupin. Yeah. And I was like, I wasn't too sure what you meant by that. And then I was like, are they referring to like underworld stuff? And I was like, possibly, yeah.
Yeah, basically, from what I could gather, they didn't like the traditional wolf man face because they had to step away from it.
They did not like the hot glue in for.
They didn't like the Larry the Lurker of it all, to be honest. So what they decided to do was move his eyes further round so he looked more dog-like. So they weren't square on like humans; they were slightly offset. And they were pointing up. But that was Stan's idea. Stan actually based the face of the before they laid the hair on the mask. If you look at the Wolfman, he is the spitting image of Stan Winston. He used his own image to make the Wolfman, except for he pulled the eyes round, and then when they laid the hair, you can't see it as much. But when you see the sculpture, when you see the sculpture, it is very similar to Stan. So, which is a weird.
I can kind of see what you. I can kind of see what you mean. So good. Poor Larry.
Never gets the love he deserves, does the old Larry the Lurker?
Honestly, I will stand Larry until the day I die now. Like I am number one Larry.
The weirdest thing about Stan Winston was though I've never heard a bad word about him until this one occasion. But then I think it was more to do with Tom Noonan because he seemed in the interviews, Tom Noonan, who played Frankie, seemed a bit of a dick. I have to be honest, to be blatant about it. And he was the only one who seemed to he didn't like Ashley when she was Phoebe. He said she was a bit annoying. And he just came off a bit pretentious in the interview and nonchalant about it all. It was just like, whatever, But the story he told about Stan Winston was that one day Stan was so annoyed with the way that he was method acting all the time. Mm-hmm. Even when he was in the chair being made up, he would just method act from being himself to going completely into Frankenstein's monster as he was going on.
Yeah.
And he said so Stan would do things like glue his hands to the chair so he couldn't move. And Stan would like glue his eyes shut and stuff like that.
Wow.
But they were taken as practical jokes, but he said I didn't take too kindly to it. So I don't really have much kind words to say about Stan Winston. And I was like, you're the only person that I've ever heard. I mean, I haven't deep dived into Stan, to be fair.
It's only been a brief look today when I was looking up it's the first person I go to when we're talking about movies like this is the makeup artist. Yeah. And it's a name that's been spoke quite a few times on this podcast. And I've kind of dismissed it and went, yeah, okay. And then when I looked at his credits and I went, yeah, oh, fucking K. Wow. Like, this man is responsible for a lot, and we will be doing a man behind the makeup episode on Stan because it was unreal what I was reading, but I didn't do like a huge deep dive. I was probably more taken aback at like, oh, he did that. Oh, he did this. Wow, he did that. Oh, he's dead.
Well, he was one of the first, like the scene where the werewolf gets shot out the window into 1,000 pieces and falls on the floor. And the Sean's dad thinks, oh yeah, I've done it. He's dead. La la la. And you see all the limbs and appendages coming back together. They were actually fake limbs on remote-controlled wheels that were shooting them back together so that they went smoothly. Yeah, so they were remote-controlled to look like they were coming back together. So I thought that was pretty clever. Simple, Really
Simple.
simple but clever. So
Oh, that's brilliant. That I'm actually all out of. Yeah, I'm all out of notes. I'm all out of
I've got
facts.
loads.
Come on, then lay them on me.
Because there was the small change. I say small change compared to what we've been looked at in like at the Howling, American Werewolf.
Yeah.
The small change in the phone box they did with the werewolf. When they were looking at designs and ways to get around the traditional Wolfman look, Larry had trousers on, didn't he? But I don't.
He did,
and he had a button-up shirt.
Yeah.
So what they wanted to do was differentiate. So they looked at all the other people that have played Wolfman, and they looked at Oliver Reed's version with the white tattered shirt, and they took that because he wasn't copyrighted by Universal. So they took his wardrobe as a homage to a Wolfman of sorts, but just not the Wolfman, which I thought was another clever thing.
It would have been very hard to. I think it would have been very hard to do Larry, like to even just do a slight change to Larry, because let's be honest, we talked about this in the Wolfman episode. Go back and watch it; it was a brilliant episode. But he's not the greatest of Wolfmen.
He's not the greatest of people, but just as a character in real life, he's a bit of a shit, isn't he? So
I still feel sorry for him though. He still gets a lot of shit on this podcast. Oh, didn't it, man? I should have
Larry be lurking. Yeah,
I should have had me Larry t-shirt on tonight.
He the thing is, the special effects guys, when they were also doing the special effects for the Mummy, they were saying that they tried so hard. It was really difficult for them to keep. They found themselves when they were sculpting and stuff that they would veer towards Universals naturally because that is where their brain's at.
Yeah.
So they had to keep coming back from that. And so when they were doing the Mummy, to stay away from Carlos' mummy, they looked at like pharaohs. And so they were looking at Ramesses III in the end as inspiration for the mummy as we know it in this movie.
Yeah.
And so they used that, but then they had to make a full body puppet as well as the costume for, I think his name's Michael. It's his name, Michael? Yeah, Michael. Because there's that scene where Eugene's, there's a mummy in my closet. Oh. And he's standing there telling his dad, and his dad's going, oh, you monsters, get out this room. And he's like, he's in my closet. And he opens the door, and the dad's obviously not looking. He's looking at Eugene, and the mummy's in the closet. And you see how janky it's moving. So you can see it's a puppet, like an animatronic of some kind. But I can still see how that poor little kid would have been shitless of that, even like.
Did you get Eddie Spaghetti vibes from Eugene? Because I certainly did.
The one thing about Eugene that I did find kind of weird, I'm not going to lie, cute kid, and the fact adorable. That he's got a dog called Pete as his sidekick.
Yeah.
Bonus, but like, why was he wearing a Confederate hat? When he's writing his note to the army, please come quick, there's monsters, or whatever it is he puts in that note. Love, Eugene. He sat there with a Confederate Army hat on, and I was just like, oh, didn't notice that before.
Oh my god, why am I never picked up on that?
Yeah, like a General Custer last stand jobby. Honestly, it's like,
whoa. Yeah,
that's a choice. I don't know what was going on in the wardrobe department that day, but
that does not fit his character at all.
I'm going to go along the lines of that is laying about the house and he just put it on because he didn't know any better.
But how fucking genius that he writes to the army and lo and behold, the army show up.
Who's Eugene?
Oh, me.
Mummy came in my closet,
Oh my god. It's when you think the movie's done with. The good guys win. They're all surrounded in the street, and then all of a sudden, the fucking army. Oh, sorry, spoilers, by the way. The army shows up. It's so funny that they come off the back of Eugene's note.
I mean, that was a very well detailed note. He knew exactly where to come and find them.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a moth going around my bedroom, and it's really starting to get on my nerves because I keep seeing it going like there, and I'm like, ghosts.
Their tagline was, you know who to call when you have ghosts, but do you know who to call when you've got monsters?
Why the fuck did I not find that tagline earlier? The only one I found was "Never send a man to do a kid's job."
Yeah, that one was used on the posters, I think. It should be on the other side. I don't know if you can see that. That's Wolfman's got Nard's target, and he's got he's got a target on his Nards like that where you can shoot them. You can't see his Nards, but it's there.
I'm gonna fucking kill this moth in a minute. It's like proper doing my head in now. That is probably what it. I see. Like, there's so many great lines, but Wolfman's got Nards. Kick him in the Nards is one of my favorite lines. Anytime someone mentions Monster Squad, it's the first thing I say.
I think it's the first thing everyone says. I think that's their go-to line. Wolfman's got Nards.
Kick him in the Nards.
I think that's the saddest thing. Brent Challam, who played Horace, sadly passed away in 1997. Yeah, of pneumonia. He was only 22.
Oh, how sad.
Yeah, but Fred Decker had nothing but lovely things to say about him. Like, all of the cast did. They said he bought this. He was the youngest of the cast at the time as well. Other than Phoebe, he was 10. When all the other kids were around 12 or 13, apart from Rudy, who was like 15.
Yeah.
But he bought this innocence that they've really wanted for Horace, because they wanted him to be that kid, and he didn't really bring a character. He just
was him,
and that's what they love so much about him. But he bought this youthful, like, he was so excited because this was his first kind of foray into acting, whereas people like Andre, Ryan, and Robbie, they'd all done like Days of Our Lives soaps. They'd been well and truly in all that kind of land.
They'd been in front of the camera and everything.
Yeah, and he hadn't. It wasn't really something he'd done much of. So they just loved the fact that he was just so excited all the time. He brought that with him.
My God, he's an adorable character who really gives me Chunk vibes, like from the Goonies.
Well, when you start comparing, you're looking. You're not far off. You've got Sean, who ironically is playing the Mikey character, whose also real name is called Sean. You've got the gobby one, Mouth, who plays Mouth in this one. Well, you're probably looking at maybe Rudy, you could say, was
definitely
that character.
Rudy.
And then you're looking at like Chunk, which is Horace. So when you started going through, there's so many similarities. People were saying it was a blatant rip-off of the Goonies, but it wasn't. You're talking two totally different films. This
totally different fucking premises.
But yeah, there's so many people that are like, oh, you ripped it off because it came out quite close. I mean, I think Goonies was 84, 85. I think, off the top of my head. I know I'm going to get shouted at for that, but it's somewhere in that ballpark. So,
well, I don't even know if Paul will be in the chat because he's not seen the Monster Squad. I know.
Shame on you.
I know.
I'm going to check now because I don't want to be vilified, hung, drawn, and quartered. But as far as I'm aware, it was very, very close. But people forget that treatments are written years in advance.
And also, it was such a thing in the 80s of children's, like, this style. You don't have Stranger Things without movies like this.
It is the Stranger Things of 1987. Goonies was the Stranger Things of 1985, because I just checked. But there was too many parallels, and the fact that obviously Mary Ellen Trainor, the mum, was in it. People were just so easy to go to. There we are. Do you know what I mean? And it was just like, it's not the same thing. We're not going on a massive adventure to find treasure. This is kids that are trying to kill Dracula because he's mean, They
summoned the Monster Squad. No, they summoned the monsters for them to then summon their Monster Squad.
They do some really good stuff in this. There's subtle nods as well, like when they're in the plane and they're flying them over in all their crates, on the side of the plane it's got Browning on the side of the plane. Now there's two different stories to who that they're homaging to in that. One was Todd Browning, because he directed Dracula and the whole Dracula debacle that takes place on the plane. And the other ones were saying they also think it's Rico Browning from The Creature. So they're playing homage to both of those through calling it Browning Air or whatever it was, which I thought was quite a nice touch.
That's lovely. That is a lovely touch. See, not mocking, not taking the piss, homage.
And again, at the very, very beginning, in the opening scenes where Dracula comes out to do the Van Helsing thing, you see armadillos, right? No reason for armadillos. I was watching Dead Meat do their podcast about the Monster Squad, and the lady on it got really like adamant. Why have they got armadillos? She was getting really thingy about it. And I was like, do your research and then you'll find out. There is armadillos in Dracula, the 1930, because I've gone blank on that one. But the original Dracula movie, there is armadillos walking around for some God knows, I do not know why, but they are walking around in the 1930s version. So they've homaged the opening of Monster Squad.
Fucking cool. Just an interesting facts about armadillos. If you hit one, your car will come off the road, as ours did when we hit one in Florida.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. It's a good job your mum was driving a fucking tank. Yeah. We were coming back from a concert we've been to see. Christ. We've been to see Dave Matthews Band. It's my mum's favourite. And he was playing in South Beach, and we drove down there and drove back the same night, and it was like road, no lights, just your lights, and the car went douche. And my dad had to get out and have a look, and he went, yep, you've just went straight through the middle of an armadillo.
Oh God.
Do you know what it is? The poor woman had such a bad time that holiday because the amount of squirrels she kept knocking over was ridiculous. Florida squirrels are deadly. They just run out of everywhere. Yeah, she ran over an armadillo.
Well, there's that. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that's a fun pastime to have, but
Can't believe I've just shared that story.
It's relevant. It's armadillos.
But I do love the fact that we've not done Dracula yet, have we? No, we have not. No, because I was wondering. I was like, I have not watched Dracula recently. I know I watched it for when we did the Universal Monsters episode on the Sunday, but I haven't watched it recently, and I'm like, would I have picked up on that? Should I have picked up on that? I am now going to pick up on that. Yeah, there is. If you watch closely, apparently, I mean, they backed it up with the YouTube clip, but I didn't watch it because I thought if they put it there, it must be right. It's there.
But yeah, I mean,
I love that. Like that's fucking detail.
It's thought through, and that's the thing. And like we said earlier about the mirrored scene between Phoebe and Frankie.
Mm-hmm.
There's the constant little homages all the way through to Universal, and had the license in,
imagine
it would have been crazy, but
it would have. But I'm glad the fact that we've got what we've got, because it is such like I said at the beginning, it's a love letter to the Universal monsters, and I love that. You said it throughout here. They've missed a complete trick. But I'm glad we got what we've gotten, so we can have that, because you feel it's ridiculous. You do feel like you're part of the Monster Squad once you join these kids, and you're sitting watching their clubhouse and all of the references around.
Yeah, I'm not a member, but Frankie's a member.
Look at that man! I want one.
The poster, then there's some stickers and a pin and postcards and stuff, and then I don't know if you can see.
I can see
Dracula there. It was all done in an old VHS box by Alley Cat Graphics, and they released like a Monster Squad poster, which is the poster here. And I've got
Alley Cat Graphics.
I've got I also got some other ones. I've got Return of the Living Dead and Day of the Dead ones as well, and I absolutely love them. But the pin badge is amazing. You've got all 5 of the monsters.
God damn it. I love Alley Craft. They do. I do. My favourite pins, besides my ones from Creature from the Black Tattoo, is my Regan one from The Exorcist. I fucking love that pin. I always have it. Like I chop and change me leather jacket and what pins I have, but she never ever comes off.
I've got a Reanimator picture, which you see in the video if you look long that I put up.
Please,
Alley Cat Graphics have done.
Go and check out Dan's TikTok or Facebook to have a look at the magnificent room that she is sitting in, because holy shit, what is in front of her? You think what's behind her is impressive. Wait till you see what is in front of her. I got a sneak peek before anyone else did. So that
was before I tidied it properly. Yeah, got stuff on the walls. But the Alley Cat Graphics of the Reanimator that John did. I've actually got Jeffrey Coombs, and he signed that for me on there as well. So, but yeah, this is one of my favourites. The badge is that. So it's all the monsters on the badge as well. So you got your Gill-man, your Wolfman, Dracula, the Mummy, and Frankie. So yeah, I forgot how much was in these boxes when I opened it. So I was like, I'm sure I've got some I've got Monster Squad merch somewhere, and I was like, I remember now. Yeah,
I really need to move my Reanimator picture, because I've got the poster. You can see if you can see the posters here, there's more, but he's up there. He's just there.
I can sort of see it. Yeah.
Why won't my hand there?
Yeah. But yeah, I love
Why
Jeffrey.
couldn't I direct my finger to where?
It's because you're looking through the camera finder, aren't you?
That was so fucking hard.
Another weird fact is that the same year it found its second wind and got re-released. It got released on DVD. 2006. There's a movie that came out called Benchwarmers. Mm-hmm. And in that movie, John Lovitz has the costume of the Gill-man from the Monster Squad in the background of his room, his collections room.
Wow.
When he's playing the part of whoever it is he plays, they spin round and you can see the Gill-man. Now they've said that Frankie is there as well, but you only tend to see a blurred part of it, so I can't tell whether it's the whole thing or not. But yeah, so apparently in Benchwarmers, the Gill-man makes an appearance again for the first time in 19 years.
Well, I'm going to put this one out there before you say it, because I've got a feeling it's coming out soon. Night of the Creeps.
Yeah.
Monster Squad gets a shout out in Night of the Creeps. Now, I've seen Night of the Creeps, and it was a while ago, but I can't remember it at all.
Fred Decker, it was his third. I don't know if it was his third at the time. He'd already done House, and then he did, because he filmed House at his dad's house. So the exterior of the house in House is his dad's house.
Dad's house.
Yeah.
House.
So that was his first horror. And then he did Night of the Creeps, but I don't know in what order they came in treatment or they came out in the cinema. But I know I'm sure House 2 came out the same year as Monster Squad.
When Night of the Creeps came out in 1986.
Yeah. And
then Monster Squad 87, House 85.
Yes, it was House 2 that came out.
House 2 87.
Yeah.
Fuck me, he did The Predator in 2018.
Him and Shane come back together to write the
Whoa.
Why bit.
Whoa. I'm not even from Newcastle. Hang on. Malcolm.
Shake the Geordie off. Come on, shake it off.
We talked about it in the Predator episode. See how many episodes we have managed to go back to, go back and listen to Predator. Go back and listen to this.
Everything is connected. It's the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, isn't it? You know what I mean? Everything's related to something else.
Yeah, he's only 64 years old.
Shane Black?
No.
Who?
Decker.
Fred, yeah. He hasn't aged well, but from his career, he was saying that there's a difference between what Shane got up to and what Fred's been up to be fair.
Yeah.
Shane loved his drinks and his drugs and his women and his fast and living hard lifestyle, whereas Fred thought he was a failure and became somewhat of
Oh, it's so sad that he thought that.
Yeah.
If they thought that on the back of this, it's devastating because we know in the horror community this is a favorite. Like everyone's like kind of comfort movie would be the Monster Squad.
It's a gateway movie.
It is massively.
So, yeah, but he had no idea, like I said, for the best part of 19 years that this movie was loved by so many people because of the 2-week run in the cinema. Then it went to HBO and it was on cable about 100 times a day. And then it just, the minute they stopped it on cable, you couldn't find it anywhere unless you got an X rental or you went to the store and hired a VHS.
Like what we used to do.
So it disappeared into obscurity. You couldn't find it unless you had an original VHS. And that was that. So when it got its resurgence and they released it in 2006, 2007 on DVD, the numbers for the sale went through the roof. So then they realized they cottoned on there's something going on. So 10 years later, this is where Andre, Ryan and Ashley started they did 17 shows in 17 different cities over 17 days to promote the Monster Squad. It's now being taught as a staple of movie like masterclasses at universities across the US. They're teaching it to the kids to show them this is how you make a movie. This is how you involve key staple well-known characters without copyright infringement. This is how you make a kids group. Basically everything that they said, you can sit there and go, well, there's similarities to the Goonies, there's similarities to the Losers Club, there's similarities. When you start going through, they were just kids. You're always going to have your funny kids, your overweight kid, your clever kids, they're all just staples, and that's the natural groups you fell in as kids as well. There was always like a dynamic.
There cannot be enough movies where it's like coming of age movies. We fucking lived for them back in the 80s. Like, we didn't care that another one looked or was ever so potentially similar to the last one. We didn't give a shit. We just wanted more. And that's why we fucking love Stranger Things when it came out.
Because it worked. It was a formula that worked. We wanted to see ourselves.
Yes.
And that's something you don't see anymore because everybody's put on strict diets, or they're CGI'd up to the eyeballs, or they're not
allowed to be kids.
They're not real.
No.
And that's the sad thing anymore. It's very rare you see an adventure movie like Stranger Things is probably the nearest you're going to get to what we had for the modern day. I can't sit here and say I've seen a film in the last X amount of years that has given me that same kind of I don't know what.
Do you know the only one that comes close in my head, and it's only because it's not a recent one, but it's probably more recent than what we've been talking about, is Dreamcatcher. Dreamcatcher has that sequence of the kids when they're younger to then going into their adults. Yes, we all can say that the movie is fucking terrible. I will disagree with you on that one. I actually really like it. But it still has that, and I can't even remember when Dreamcatcher came out. But that's the one thing, that's the first one that comes into my head. Just a more recent one. But we haven't had that realness of our childhood, or what we perceived as our childhood, because we all wanted that fucking adventure. And whether we found it or not, we were still always looking for it.
I will say, though, Stranger Things, the only difference between Stranger Things and what we watched was that Stranger Things is still too pretty for the 80s.
Oh yeah, it's very fucking shiny.
It's as in all the characters are very well put together, and yes, they look like they're in the 80s, but they're all very pretty people. In the 80s, no one was pretty. It wasn't like you had to go and get surgery or have your teeth fixed, or you know, you went and had a little bit of this done or that done. It was, that's your lot, deal with it. And then if you get cast, you get cast. And then that's why I think there is such a huge nostalgia for the 80s and some 90s movies, because you are so, there's less of the impossible when you're watching those films, even though they're so far-fetched adventure stories of pirate ships and monsters and you know,
One-Eyed Willie and
but in saying that, though, this movie was originally supposed to be 103 minutes long.
Oh yeah.
But they turned around and they were like, the studio was like, no, we're not doing it. You're gonna have 90 minutes. So somewhere on a cutting floor there is 13 minutes of extra footage knocking around.
I don't know if I saw it on YouTube where either someone described it or had it, but I didn't have a chance to watch it.
I'd be intrigued.
I'd be intrigued, but I would then it's me having to try and fit it in. Where would you go? Where do you go? How do you fit in? I would have to try and fit it in somehow. I forget what I was going to say. Sorry, I sneezed and it completely threw us.
Did you know Dustin Diamond, who played Screech from Saved by the Bell?
Why the fuck did I not write this down? Yes, I did know.
He had his own like scene where he was doing comic swapsies or like trading card swapsies with Patrick and Sean, and the scene got cut. So Dustin Diamond, R.I.P. or not, depending on who you talk to.
What?
He's dead. He died, but
he's dead, but
he's had a checkered past as Dustin. He stabbed someone and went to prison, didn't he? So I'm not really sure if it's a thing to be nice about or not, but yeah.
Oh, right. I get what you mean. Okay, but still, he was Screech from Saved by the Bell.
Yeah, and as Screech, he will always sing home on the range to me. So it's like, yeah, it's one of those things. But
yeah, I did know that. I read that earlier and I, for some reason, did not write it down.
Did you know that Phoebe passed on the role of the child in Fatal Attraction to do the Monster Squad? And she still stands by that being the best thing she ever did, even though Fatal Attraction went on to be as successful as it was.
I started reading that and got bored.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know if it was... I just saw Fatal Attraction and I went, I don't need to know about that. This is...
Well,
this is not that movie.
They also considered doing a reboot in 2010 of this movie. Guess by who? Of all the big production people and directors in the whole wide world, who do you think was going to do it? Big explosions.
Oh God, Shane Black.
Mr. Michael Bay.
Oh no, that's even worse. No,
Michael
don't
Bay,
let him get a hold of this.
His production company.
Shane Black's opening.
His production company basically got hold of it. And they had every intention in 2010 of rebooting the Monster Squad, not bringing back the guys 20 years later or 40 years later or 30 years later or whatever is in the idea that Fred has is that Fred still wants to make a sequel and he will do it with the characters the way they are now.
Fred,
he said that that's all he would love to do that, but obviously they'll get there if they get enough backing, but
I hope so. I hope so, because if for nothing else, but for him to know what this meant to people.
Yeah.
If for nothing else. And I know they've done documentaries, and them documentaries are there for a reason, is because there is a fan base who wants to watch them. But it's still, it makes me really sad to think that he thought for them many years that this didn't mean something. Because it meant something to my husband. He rented this out on a VHS. He knew all about it. He absolutely loves this film.
Well, the other weird fact is when it comes to the music, there's a lot of cinematic score, and the cinematic score was actually done by Bruce Broughton, and he'd actually written he'd written the cinematic score for Harry and the Hendersons, Tiny Toons, and Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. And then the main theme that they use in the film itself, which is Rock Until You Drop, Dance Until Your Heart. Yeah, that one. That didn't chart till 2016.
the
I
fuck
know.
is going on with people?
It didn't chart until 2016, at which it got to number 36 in the top 100 Billboard in the US. But the guy who sang it was Michael Sembello, and he was more famous for singing the song from Flashdance, Maniac.
He's a maniac,
Yeah.
maniac, yeah.
So he won an award for Maniac, but also did Rock Until You Drop. And he had his first chart hit in the 2010s.
Wow.
For the first time since the 80s with Rock Until You Drop, which came out in truth in the 80s, 1987. So it was nearly 30 years later that song charted for the first time.
It's crazy. The likelihood it's probably on my husband's fucking playlist. He has the most eclectic taste in music ever. Have we got any?
I've got about 3, and that's it, and I'm good. But like, I'm sure there's plenty more to be had, but all the research I was doing was just bringing me to the same facts over and over again. So,
exactly. I was going through a loop when I was reading them. It was like all about, like I say, the main one that ran through was the copyright infringement.
Yeah. Seth Green auditioned, and he's really good friends with Andre. And Andre originally wanted to be Rudy, and Seth had auditioned to be Sean.
Oh no!
So, but Sean, obviously, Seth didn't get it, and 3 years later, he got it. So, it
works out. Swings and roundabouts.
But yeah, I mean, sadly, Andre had a heart attack in 2021.
Shit.
It was so bad, he was hospitalized and had to have a pacemaker fitted, and he was only 48 at the time. And by the end of the year of 2001, he was at For the Love of Horror with Rudy, Ryan, and they were doing they were guests at For the Love of Horror, and it's the first time I've ever stood next to 2 people the same height as me.
Wow, you must have felt great.
I looked these people in the eye. Do you know how high that is for someone who's 5'3"? The photo of the 3 of us, I said to them, because as a lot of people know by now, I have this habit of asking all the stars if they will be miserable. They'll just look really depressed in the photo, like they don't want to be there.
I love it.
I'm not a smiler. It's not going to happen. I don't know how to do it. It just feels really disingenuous.
No. So
I asked them to do something like that, and the 2 of them went, "Oh, thank you. Yes, great." So the pair of them stood there going in the photo, and I'm in the middle going at the pair of them, and we are all pretty much the same height. It was surprising when I saw them. I was like, they're not that short, are they? And the closer I was getting, I was like, oh, it's perspective, maybe it's higher over there. And the closer I was getting, I was like,
what year was that? 2021?
I think so. It was the same year as Skeet and Matt. So I'm thinking it was 2021.
I was there that year.
Yeah, when Matthew Lillard and Skeet Ulrich were there. So yeah.
Was it? Year. Oh my God. Who else was that year? We were. I was there. Yes, I was there.
Yeah, they were.
I just remembered what happened when I was there. I had an absolute meltdown because I was vegan at the time and there was no vegan food for us. And I had an absolute breakdown. And it was Robert Brake who saw us when I was sitting on the audience floor, but and he kind of like give us a look to say, "You okay?" Yeah, I'm just hungry. Nothing new here. Now.
Yes,
nothing new here.
Creature stole my Twinkie. The thing that I found quite sad was that Patrick's sister didn't have a name.
Oh, really?
If we go back to our The Thing episode where Mike informed us that E.T. never had a name, this reminded me of E.T. for some reason.
That absolutely made me go like, what the fuck?
When you see in the credits, she's just known as Patrick's sister. That's her name. Even though she has a speaking role in it, and she's supposed to be the Virgin, as Eugene calls her. She has a speaking role, she does her bit, and yet she still doesn't have a real name. She's just known as Patrick's sister.
Let's call her Tiffany.
But her real name's Lisa. I do know that because I had to find it out because it was getting on my nerves. but her real name's Lisa. And there's a couple of scenes, where like people all the way through all these like top 10 blah blah blahs that you watch on YouTube, they're all like, oh, why would Rudy want to join a kids club full of like children on monsters? I'm like, he's not joining the club. He's sitting in the treehouse to spy on Patrick's sister. That's what he's doing. He never took it any further or any more serious than that.
No, he never wanted to join the club.
He was just perving on his sister through the window. So
poor Rudy, man. He has one of the greatest denim jackets, not denim, leather jackets.
Yeah.
Leather jackets going.
He was like the Fonz. He had the leather jacket, the white t-shirt. We had moccasins, white ankle like socks, the full booner. He was going for it.
Had the fucking look, and I loved it. I do like him. He's a good character. There's not a bad character in this movie. There's not. And I urge you, if you have not watched The Monster Squad, why are you watching this? But also go and watch The Monster Squad again. Even if you haven't seen it for a few years, just watch it. It is such a heart, like you feel warm and fuzzies when you're watching this.
Yeah,
I love it. Have you got any more facts before we wrap this up?
I'm sure there's plenty more, but I'm gonna say we'll leave it at that, because I mean they're all just little itty bitty things, but they all add up to something big. Like they make the film what it is. So I'm just going to leave it on the note where I say, see you later, Band-Aid breath.
Love it. We will end this episode right on that. So we are on every Monday at 7:00 on YouTube. We're also available on Spotify and iTunes for your listening pleasure. And next week, we were slightly inspired by the movie reviews that's been taking place over with Paul with his random movie ones, and he did The Mummy the other day, and we were like, oh, guess what, we have a mummy we can do. We are going to be covering Boris Karloff's The Mummy.
He's getting himself back there somehow. He's getting himself in one of these episodes again, isn't he?
He's always in our episodes. However, this is the first this is the first starring role of a Boris Karloff movie we are doing.
Yeah.
I'm not making that up my mouth. No. Yeah.
He wasn't the main
star in The Bride.
And he wasn't the main star in Frankenstein. Colin Clive was.
Colin Clive the original. Yeah. But we haven't done a Frankenstein episode yet.
No.
So yes, this is the first leading star. Boris Karloff is getting his first episode. How amazing is that? It's only taken us how long?
This is 17 episodes. We're at 17 today.
17. The man who sits on the Monsters Up North logo is finally getting his say. And we are doing it with The Mummy. It is going to be a great episode. I actually have not seen The Mummy. The Boris Karloff one. I've kept it for when we were going to be doing the episode. So it's going to be it's going to be fun to find out new things about Boris Karloff that I didn't already know because of Frankenstein.
I'm only going to relate everything to The Mummy because Frankenstein.
If we do that, we are literally taking away everything that we're going to talk about in a Frankenstein episode.
Which we know we've got to come with a very special guest eventually. So that's something you should really keep your eyes peeled for, because trust me, this guy knows a lot about everything and nothing about everything at the same time. Depends what kind of day you catch him on. But
let's hope we catch him on a good day. But yes, we do have a special guest for our Frankenstein episodes, which will be coming somewhere down the line.
Not too far away.
It's going to happen. Right. So yes, that's it. That's us done. That is episode 17 in the bag.
Yes.
The Monster Squad. Well, thank you everyone for watching. Remember, please like, share and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Do all the likes and everything when it comes down to the listening platforms. We would really appreciate it. And also, if you are feeling, you miss us and you want to hear our dulcet tones, go and listen to our past episodes, where you can hear us all over again as much as you want to.
Wonderful.
Yes. Well, thank you everyone for watching. And remember, we're the Monster Squad.
Don't be
Stay
chicken
nerdy.
shits.
Stay nerdy, everyone. Bye-bye.